So do you all know about, I've got to find it myself now, that button there?
The floppy disk.
No.
There's somebody that's got some shifts.
Is that in ours now or just in Dave?
No, it's in yours at the moment. Who can I do?
But there's the issue of it publishing over already published rosters.
Yes.
Just if we kept that.
So you do have a button there at the moment, which and you've got one in the live roster as well. So if you're working in the live roster, you can save the live roster as the master roster, and if you're working in the master roster, you can publish shifts from the master roster to the live roster. Yeah.
Right,
Now-
when you say live, do you mean live or live forward? Because if you're talking about
Well, you get to nominate the dates.
right, okay, that's all.
So you can say from this date,
Okay.
put these in, and it'll do that. But at the meeting we had yesterday, we identified that there's something you have to be careful of, which is when you're saying you want to publish the master roster, it's publishing the whole master roster, not just one extra shift that you'd put into the master roster.
So you're going to get doubles.
Yeah, so you just need to be aware of that. But what we discussed is we're going to make a change, and this probably won't be ready for Monday, but we're going to make a change so that when you put a new shift into the master roster, like one shift, it will ask you, do you want to publish it to the live roster, and for how far? A bit like the accept quote does. So at the moment, for any of you that saw the intake process, when you create a quote and accept the quote, if you've done the roster layout, then it comes up as part of the admission process and says, okay, we're going to create the master rosters, but do you want to publish these to the current rosters, and from what date? And it's only looking at the services that are like new services, so it just augments what's in the existing roster if that's the case. So we're going to take that function which already exists there and stick it into the permanent roster, so when you create a shift, it'll actually ask you, do you want to publish this forward, and from what date to what date. Yeah, and the end date, it defaults the dates to today's date as the start date, and the end date is to however far the rosters have been published out. So with all the other stuff happening now with the incremental rostering, that would mean that whenever you put an entry in the master roster, it'll say, do you want to publish this to the live roster? And if today's the 13th, so it'll say 13th of Feb to the 12th of March or whatever. Yeah, but you can change those dates. So if the service is not going to start today, but you want it to start 2 weeks' time, you could say that, and then it'll just stick it in the live roster.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, now you can do that now. You can actually do that now, but it's only like fully useful if you're doing a brand new master roster,
Yeah.
because it's going to take all the shifts. So
If you did that, if you took the master roster and said to put it into the forward, say from the 17th, just for example, I've got a few clients, not a lot, but some, that they actually have a service entered in their monthly roster. So it's not part of the masters because it's on the first Friday and the third Friday of the month. It doesn't line up with a fortnightly roll
Yeah.
what we used to have. Would that drop them out?
no,
Right, so they would still show up.
yeah, it'll just be an addition to the existing roster if anything exists.
Yeah.
So like if the rosters have been published and this client had one service a week and that's already been published, and then you wanted to plonk one on Wednesday in the master roster instead of as an addition to the Monday service,
Yeah.
it'll say, do you want to publish it forward from this date to that date? You select the start and end date, and it will just add it to the existing rosters that have been published for the gap period.
Are you talking about the services that you add to the customer's roster
Yes,
rather
to
than
the
the master
customer's
roster?
monthly.
Because currently at the moment, if the customer's got a service that's on the third week of each month, we can't put that in the master. That has to go into the customer's roster so that it rolls when it
And
comes
at
around, because
40.
we only work on a 2-week roster in the master. So you can't put in for the third week, or you can't put a monthly service into the master roster.
You can, but you just haven't got a monthly cycle established.
Yeah.
Are you actually doing calendar monthly services or
Yeah.
weekly?
No, calendar.
So what happens if, like, it's got to be on the first, second, third or fourth week
Yeah.
of the month, because the fifth week doesn't exist for that service sometimes. So, yeah.
I have a gentleman, if you want to have a look, Martin Chamberlain's his name, and he has transports to and from an outing on the first Friday of the month and the third Friday of the month. And so
Oh, not
they
even
can
those.
change, like, where they fall.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
it is possible to have a monthly roster, but I think Tassie has, doesn't it?
We used to have a cycle 3 now, but 4 weekly roster.
So you can have you can have a monthly roster, but you just need to be careful about how it's published, that's all.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I-
I just drop him in 6 months at a time, like you say, I've done it, and then.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a big issue.
Not a big deal.
There's a fair bit of work to set it up, so it's probably not worth it.
It's, you only have a couple, like.
However, we've got a big issue around home care packages potentially not having all their funds spent. And so what we want to do when we do this next version is put in things like a 6-monthly gutter clean and a 6-monthly carpet clean and an annual spring clean. And I want them to go in
Yeah.
at the beginning. I don't want a spreadsheet that you've got to go and refer to that says, now remember to put this in here. So we need to be able to put those one-off services that we know that we're going to do in the roster when we're setting it up.
And
Which
can
is
we
what
print
you're
a
doing at the
report
moment.
to say when they are, and what, because that's going to affect, we're not going to be able to see them.
No, so the case
From a
manager will
staffing
need
point
to
of
be
view.
able to do that when they set up initially.
Yeah.
When they set up the home care package services initially, so hopefully we'll go in on that budget tool that's actually in here, and then it'll suck across. I don't know how it'll suck across if it's only 6 monthly, but we'll give the case managers some assistance with that. So for example, we would do gutter cleans and yard cleans, say in November, leading up to December. So a couple of things, that means it sets up for Christmas and it looks good. It actually starts to clear up before the rain or the fires or the whatever. So we have that summertime clean and then we have one 6 months later. So we want to put them in at that time. That kind of thing, you know.
Just, all I'm suggesting is we need to be able to see that from a personnel point of view to know that we can actually deliver the services. Because if we don't, when I'm looking at, if I need staff, I'm looking at my masters, they're not in there. And I'm also looking in what I know are my intermittent services. So I can say, okay, well, I know I've got 20 hours that are going to fall here. I need to know how many hours and when they're going to hit. Am I going to be able to service it? That's all.
Maybe
There will be a report you can put.
yeah, and maybe for those services, because they are bigger, you know, the carpet cleaning may well be through Jim's carpet cleaning, and the yard clean may be to Jim's gardening rather than our own HGMs, because there's a, you know, a natural rotation. But the other one that comes to mind is when we establish our foot care service, we'll need someone going and doing that. It might be every 6th week, it might be every 7th week, it might be every 8th week. So that's a cycle that would be rolling or continual. So that we would need to be able to do that as well. So just, we can talk about that one another time.
Yeah, that opens up a few issues, but for rostering, for exactly what you're saying, because if it's a 6 monthly service, for every other day and month, it's not an issue, but on that day, every 6 months, it is a staffing issue.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure, like, you'd have to publish annually in advance to see the full impact of 6 monthly and annual services. Because you can't say that obviously it doesn't impact every fortnight, it only impacts once every 6 months.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure what's the best management of that from your perspective. Because you can't really, if you wanted to actually manage the staffing for it, you'd have to have, I mean, you could do something like publish an annual roster, like as a staffing implications or staff planning tool. You could run roster publishers for the whole year and have it generated with all the ad hoc shifts that you've got, or the 6 monthly and annual shifts that you've got. But all it would be for is for staff planning purposes. Because otherwise you won't get visibility. Like even if it was an automated entry into the roster, it's only going to happen once every 6 months. Then I just want to work through, I mean, basically we're going to review what we did last time. Any questions that you've got, but also to show you the changes that we sort of talked about at the last meeting. So there's a few things in there that you will really like, but they're just responses to what you talked about. So where are they? Okay, we've adjusted something. This wasn't one of the things you asked about. I think Rachel has asked about it at some point in the past. But so I'm not sure whether you're aware. Who puts the meal entries on the rosters?
Meals, or, yeah, well, Meals were doing it.
Okay,
We
so
just adjust them if the time changes, if they go over.
so there was a thing that we'd set up a long time ago where if you designated the program that the service was being delivered from, if you said it was a meals program, then when you went into the roster and added a service, you didn't have to approve all of the individual meal items for the meals program against the client for them to be able to access multiple meals. So, you know, at the moment, the normal admission process is that you can't roster a service unless it's been approved against the client. So if it's not in the client's approved service list, you can't roster it. However, with meals, it's a bit awkward because if you've got a menu that's 250 items, then if you follow that through, you'd have to approve 250 items for the client before you'd be able to get across all meals. So we had previously put in something where you could, if the program was nominated as a meals program, then when you went into the client record, as long as they were approved for the program, you could then roster all services in that program if it was designated as meals. Yep, which meant that you didn't have to do an individual approval for all the services at the front end, but you could still roster them. However, it fell to pieces with home care packages because home care packages is not a meals program, but home care package people get meals. So we've just made an adjustment so that if the activity is a meals activity, it will also work in the home care package programs as well. So basically, it's a functionality you've got now, and obviously not a lot of you are using it, but we've adjusted it so that you can use it in home care package programs as well. So none of you here are using meals? Okay, well, that's all good.
But we
Well, we
need,
do, but we don't do it anymore, and maybe Scott needs to be involved in, I don't know whether.
so do we have any home care package clients who get a delivered meal?
Yes, yeah.
Or we
No,
are
we do.
using
That's
it.
what we don't do it. As schedulers, we don't do it. It must get done for us.
It used
No,
to be
it's not a
the
meals
the
program
meals.
though.
Yeah,
It's
not.
different. It's charged at the back end.
Okay.
So finance
They
put the charge
still-
against it.
Get rostered meals though.
Yeah, but how, but the.
So it's 50-50.
50-50,
Okay,
yeah.
so they still get rostered meals under HCP, but then there's back end split on it, which is that's finance at the end of the day. But yeah, they are still getting rostered the.
Okay, so I
It's
mean,
in,
it's not.
against the client in there,
Yeah.
what they buy.
This is another one for Laurelie actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably Laurelie and Carol, but we just need to make sure the costings are accurate.
Well, the other thing is, and I don't know whether I'm misunderstanding, but there is an underlying concept to if you're going to run the home care package statements out of TRACCS, every service that the client gets, including outsourced and broken services, need to be in the client's record, like in the roster.
Yeah,
So
and
it is, is
it
it? Yeah,
is,
okay.
yes, it is.
All right. So one of the things you asked for was to force a note on cancellation. So we've implemented that. So if you're in the day manager and you cancel a shift, it will force you to put in a note. Yeah? Then you've now got the capacity to register a cancellation against the booking, which was one of the other things. So this is just working through your list. So
They
cancel shift.
straight out of unassigned bookings.
Yep.
So good, that's what we want to.
Your next one was. So the other one was to have more detail in the notes or the audit about what the original nature of the cancelled shift was. So if we look in, while I'm doing this, I'm going to switch. So I want to look at cancellations that I've done. So I don't know what your work pattern is, but I'm going to go into recipient management and then filter by absence, yeah? So that's a quick way to get to client absences. But you'd probably put a filter on first for the client that you were looking for. Does that make sense? So, because one of the other things you asked for was to have the direct care tick box default to on when you go to recipient management view, yes? So we've done that as well. So if you just flick to recipient management view, if you haven't got a filter on, it's going to show all recipient rosters for your whatever filters you've got in place. So that includes the direct care shifts, which it wasn't previously. You had to tick that box on, and people were complaining about having to do that. Yeah. So when I go to recipient management now, direct care is automatically ticked, and then I'm just going to filter for absences. So if we look in one of those, why can't I move it? So it's now got the original detail of it, that was the service and that was the staff member that was originally rostered to do the shift.
Which we couldn't see before.
Yeah. I don't think you need the audit. And it's got the audit there, just the audit just shows that it was an automatic cancellation created on such and such date by this user, but the service note actually has the details of the original worker and the service that it was.
So I didn't see that, so it tells you that it was a DA as opposed to a PC?
Yeah, yeah. Yep, so there's your, I mean, it's not the codes you use.
Okay, yeah.
That's the service there.
Does that show the customer's name or just the support worker?
Well, you know the customer because that's Drine and Sanson.
Okay, so that's customers on the side.
Yep.
Then,
Yeah, so I've flicked into recipient management view because you won't see a cancellation in the staff view because the cancellation doesn't apply to the staff unless they've got an admin shift because it was a short notice or no notice.
But if you've got a query and you were asked, why this and why that, you would have been given the client's name. You can go in through the client's roster the same as you normally would, find the cancellation and open it from there.
Yeah, you can, but I don't want to encourage any behaviour that takes you out of the day manager view.
Okay.
So is there a reason why you do it that way?
Only
Yeah.
if you're answering a query, so you already know who the client is and you just go straight to the client.
Well, I'll give you a different way to do it then. So in this case, I was just looking for random absences because
Yeah.
I didn't know which particular one I wanted.
Yeah.
But for what you're describing there, you would have just gone up here.
Yeah.
You know how we looked at that, the fact that you can bring up a specific recipient?
Yeah.
So you could have just searched for who the recipient was,
Yeah.
and that'll bring up all their services, and then just flick to recipient management view, and it'll include the absences for that client.
It's going to be the biggest culture change is going to be getting it into everyone's head to work out, do everything out of there.
So this is your challenge next week after, because when you train your buddies, that's what you need to send that message. So you've got next week to actually get yourselves into this mode. So you're going to be responsible for your buddies.
So when we're looking at day, like when we're during the day, if you can advise me, what am I trying to say here? So we're producing content videos, right? So it's going to be like, how do you do a cancellation? Right click cancel, there's going to be a video about it, the same as the intake process. So I'm just, as it stands, I'm producing stock standard procedures. But if you need additional content to cover off on changed work practice, you want to sort of tell us what that would look like, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah.
So like if there's a specific, if the scheduler is using Day Manager 2 and you find them in the rosters because there is a reason, but it's not a valid reason, we need to show them how you would do the equivalent using Day Manager 2.
Right.
So I don't really know what those are until somebody tells me.
So every time you go out of that window, we need just to report it and document it. So I went out of the window because
Yeah.
we need to feed it back.
Well, I don't want to make extra work, but I mean,
No,
if somebody starts to whinge, like at first they whinged about the 28 days, well, we can have a discussion point if somebody whinges. But if nobody's having any problems, that's fine. But if you find somebody who's habitually going to the roster or the client record, and there is a valid reason for it, we will work with you to adjust it.
Yeah.
So what-
Laziness and teaching old dogs new tricks
Yeah,
is
that-
not a valid reason, is
No.
it?
Yeah.
Correct.
No, this is because the way we've always done it is not a valid reason.
And that's your first student.
I know.
I mean, if you want, I mean, this would probably be something for Gary, but you could disable rosters in the user profile if you had something that was particularly awkward.
That'd be funny.
Because there's not really a reason, you can get to the roster, like, you can get to the roster from within the day manager in any case, which is what we were doing the other day. So you can get to the full monthly view of the roster in the day manager, and you can also get the daily view. So I'm not seeing a reason, because what's happening behind the scenes, which you guys probably aren't aware of, but it's just this cascading series of events that have continuously ended up in performance hits on rostering. But one of the things is self-induced, because everybody is opening up 40,000 versions of the rosters and the client record and the staff record and the main menu, because they've got that. Sorry?
Slows it all down.
Yes. So every time you do that, it's also pulling a license, okay, which is another discussion we have to have. But so there is an ability in there to limit how many sessions of each module worker
It's
can have
already
open.
in there.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah, which I think is set
Many
to
are
2.
Two.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
So
can get
annoying.
4 if you try hard enough.
I don't know how you do
Do all
that.
the reasons.
Okay, I've
Systems.
noted that.
I do it, no. 6 o'clock until 7:30 in the morning is my time. Nobody else is on. I have 4 rosters going. I turn them off when everyone else gets on.
All right, I won't argue that. And also because at the moment you've got the 2 databases, so there's workers that need, and that would allow you to bypass it, so you could have 2 Tassie and 2 mainland rosters open. But once the database consolidation happens, that'll stop as well. So, you know, in 6 months, what I would expect is there's only 1 database and nobody's having to open multiple sessions of anything, and all the schedulers are working just in the day manager instead of having multiple modules open. So all of that's going to make a difference, yeah?
Hopefully. My system slows massively between 7:30 and 8 o'clock every day. It just goes straight down as soon as
Yeah.
everybody else comes online.
So behind the scenes, it's 7 times a day, there's a backup and restore taking place, which is what we did the pay integrity check for.
Yeah.
So Susie's at the point where she's said that she's happy to go without them for a trial run. So I'm expecting that there won't be as significant a hit on resources 7 times a day at those pinch points, because the backup takes about half an hour, or the restore. So you're probably getting some significant performance decreases at certain times during the day that you sort of can pick, oh yeah, it's that time. Yeah, and that's probably when the backup and restore is taking place. So if we stop those, it's not going to fix everything, because there's other things happening here which we don't know about, like scanning documents and uploading. If that's happening at a certain point in the day, that's going to slow everything down. But you'll know the difference, because there'll be generic times where everything's slow. So what we can control and don't want is that TRACCS is the only slow thing. Like if everything's slow, we can't do anything about it, it's a Bob issue. But if it's just TRACCS that's slow for a certain thing, then that's something we need to know about, because it shouldn't be the case. Okay, yes, so we've made cancellations available in unassigned bookings. We've adjusted the order or the service notes to include more detail of the cancellation as per request. There's 2 parts to this. I'll just do the first part first. So in the Day Manager 2 that you had, you could highlight multiple shifts like that, but you couldn't click on the column header to highlight a whole day if it was a public holiday. So we've changed that so that you can highlight the whole day in one click. And as per discussions, so Rachel, if you just want to watch what we've done here, and then we can have a conversation about it. So you know how you wanted the capacity to right-click change activity, which is currently not available to you? And the reason it's not available is because it doesn't validate the billing rate or the data set type, yeah? So we've given you back that capacity, like Rachel has to enable it, but you'll be able to do it, and it will change the data set type and the billing rate to the new activity. But we took it a step further, so at the moment it displays all activities, which was one of your comments. So now what we did was, if if you select two services which are not, where the client is not approved, or basically it brings up a compressed list of only services that are approved for every client in the highlighted list. Does that make sense?
No, and I don't know why you do two clients.
For them, it'd be like a public holiday. They want to change all the PCs to PC public holiday.
You have to make sure that all home care packages.
That's what I'm saying. This will, the reason I'm getting no activities in that list is because those two clients,
Are different programs?
yeah, or different activity codes.
Yes. Okay.
But what it displays there is only services that, so if we,
Or comment to both.
yeah, if we just do one, okay, so that client is only approved for CEC weekday 04, so it doesn't give me the full list of services, it only gives me the services that client's approved for, that I could conceivably change it to, which looks after all of your upfront data validation. So it's no different to if you're doing a normal roster allocation, it's only limited to the approved services for that client. So if I choose a whole day, if when I go change activity, it looks at all the recipients that have been highlighted and only gives me services that all of them are approved for.
Yeah.
So that way you can't inadvertently change an activity to one that the client is not approved for.
How do you know which ones got changed and which ones didn't then?
Well, you won't get the option. Like
Oh,
you'll be trying to change it to a service, but like if the person wasn't approved for a public holiday service, public holiday is not going to come up as an option.
Right.
So the reason will be because at least one of the clients on the list isn't approved for public holiday services. Now, mostly, like this is just a check and control. Mostly you're not going to have the issue if you put your filters on correctly. Like we've got a Monday public holiday, we filter for all PC weekday, and we want to change them to PC public holiday. Well, all the people in that list will normally be approved for PC public holiday if that's your policy. So therefore it'll come up. But if it's a public holiday, the only one that it'll give you is PC public holiday. So it's also filtered by those roster actions that you've got set up in the background as well. So today, if Monday is a public holiday, and we filter for PC weekdays and go right-click change activity, the only option that would come up is PC public holiday, and it'll also change the billing rate and, if necessary, the data set type in the background.
We still find every public holiday that there are some clients that haven't had the public holiday option added for their services. Do we need to do a
That's
make sure that they're all up to date?
well, probably.
That's how the primary case managers look at each program to add that.
Because we still
To get the
still
data
end up
integrity
having-
right, to be able to have that option.
That-
We inundate Rachel and Jean.
That's actually, that's actually something we need to start doing now, to get through all the clients. So,
Definitely.
I don't know, is there, can you run a report that's got, no one's got a public holiday ticked or whatever,
Yeah.
or? So maybe we need to run that report and then.
Do you want to jot that one down, Rachel?
And Tim, if you did
just
highlight, sorry,
Yeah, but we'll
We have
just.
to know what, like personal care only, like domestic assistance will be done public holiday, because it has to be a report
So
that would
what
be
I'm
run
tr-
at each specific activity.
So what
That's
I'm
all.
worried about is we don't wanna get to the public holiday day,
That's
and
it.
this is what we're gonna do.
Well, we did
So
it
let's-
last time, we flooded them with requests to add,
Yeah.
So we could
so-
do a script that will,
just add it in.
well, no, it'll look at the activity to see whether it's flagged as a public holiday activity, and it'll give you a list of clients that aren't approved for it.
So that then you can check them and see
Yeah.
what they made added and request it.
I think you
I'd
find
rather
out-
do the script where, add in the public holiday activities
If it
where they
wasn't
don't
there.
exist.
Yeah,
I
but
think I have that script,
you have.
I may have already.
Yeah, the trouble is that's a blanket unless you filter it by activity. Like you'd have to say, okay, for all
It was, yeah.
incident for DA weekday becomes DA public
Yeah, but
holiday.
we don't have public holidays set up in TRACCS, so I can be 100% certain that the activities that are ticked for public holiday only have public holiday ticked, because we don't have public holidays set up.
So can we put that down as like an audit thing for us for the whole activity list has to be checked for the rostering limits that are applied.
Yeah, I have a
That's-
script for that.
Okay, you've already got it.
From when we initially did it, I should. If not, I can ask.
Okay, so that's
Yeah,
going to
because
be a
you
work,
don't
like an
Yeah.
action for probably the TRACCS help desk, but you'll need to know about it.
Yeah.
Yes, and then we can start eating the elephant one bite at a time, so that by the time the next public holiday comes around,
Isn't that far away?
no, it's not far, no, we've got Easter and Anzac Day.
And Tim, once a service is changed to a public holiday, can we get that heart changed to a different colour? So if this, like, visually, we can make sure that we haven't missed any service that's on there.
Talk to Les, he loves talking about this.
Can we change the heart to a different colour so we
You know what you
visually
did
can
with the
see
public
that
holiday
it's been
shifts?
changed to a public holiday?
Yes, you can do that.
So we don't
So
miss-
just change the
so we
colour
don't miss
code
any.
label.
Yeah, you had that story, I think at Puma you did,
Yes, so when you look at the roster for a public holiday, it has, the banner of the day is in like a pale green. Well, what we can do for all the services that are rostered
Once we
specifically
change
for
it to a public holiday
public
service,
holiday, we
yeah.
can actually put that service at the same green color.
Yes, that'd be good.
So when you're looking at the column of the
We
public
can make
holiday,
sure that there's nothing being
anything
missed.
white is
Yeah.
the odd.
Yeah.
So the action would be changing it to like another color.
yeah, so yeah, if we're going to do an audit of the activities for the roster enhancements, for the roster actions, we can also run a script to force that, once the activities are cleaned up, we can run a script that forces that colour code into the activities.
Maybe, then we would maybe be able to see, because list anything being changed over.
Okay, just have to work out the mechanics for that.
Yeah, no, the script's fairly simple. You just need to tell us what that colour code was.
For the green?
Yeah.
Yeah, for the pale green, you know, you said you spent some time
But
searching
you
for
figured
it.
it out, it's filters, but yeah.
Yeah, I wrote it down.
So all good. So it's not there at the moment, but we'll switch it on unless anybody's got any objections, or Gabby says no, or Rachel says a problem. We'll switch it on that from next week. You actually get the change option, but it'll only be to change the activity, not all the others.
Yeah, here's the color code. Red 208, green 216, blue 156. So do I just give that to Rachel?
No, we'll
we'll
do
go
it with
with
the script. So we'll just need to change it to a hex value. And
Yeah, got it. I knew I had
Okay,
it.
so for next week though, I just need the names of the people who we're gonna use the day measure to, who I need to add activity. We can't give it to everybody blindly by the script.
okay. So who can do
Because that's
that?
the plan, right? Like just these people here are gonna use day measure two next week.
Next week?
Yes,
Yeah.
only the guy, is there anyone in the room today who was here last? There was somebody, Crystal. Where's Crystal?
Sandra Mack.
Cassie?
Yeah,
Was
she
here.
she was here last time. Why didn't she
She's
here
gone back to
today?
customer service.
Who's here?
She's gone back to customer, yeah.
Who is?
Oh, she's gone back there? Oh, I didn't know if
She's
that was
gone back to
happening.
customer service.
Okay.
We can still do a script, Rachel, if you just we'll just filter it for the people on the list. Yeah, so we just need a list of all the people.
What, 5, 10 people, it's quick for me to go out and use
Okay.
it to
Right.
really, instead of typing in their names in a script.
Okay.
Yeah, but everyone who did the training last time need to go on the list as well.
I need a list of names,
Yeah,
first
so
names.
I've already asked the service delivery managers to do a list up anyway, and, because we need to allocate buddies to everybody. So everybody that's here today, guys, and who's missing from the first one?
So you can email me the names.
Yeah.
We've re-enabled that alert. So everybody knows how to use filters, yes? Yeah. So what didn't used to be on Day Manager 2 for some unknown reason. Oh, actually, I'll just do it this time. Was this alert up the top? So that's now back, so you can quickly see whether you've got any filters in place or not without having to view them.
I may have to just remove it.
I've already pointed the fact that we've made direct care default to on when you switch to recipient management view. Now, we had done some background testing with Matt using the Day Manager 2 a couple of weeks ago, and we noted some areas where it was still asking for a full refresh of the day manager, even if you didn't make a change. So if you went, right click, cancel shift, and then you decided you didn't want to do it and exited out, or even if you did do it, it would take a lot longer. Now it's just instant. So we're not aware at this stage of anywhere where there should be a massive hit on resources unless you click the refresh button. If you click the refresh button, obviously you're demanding a full refresh, it's going to read everything out of the database again. But for all other times, generally speaking, if you're going into allocate, unallocate, cancel shift, change day or times, it should now all be fairly instant. So if there's a spot you find that's not, don't stew on it, just email Rachel or email us, or email Rachel and then she can advise us and we'll do something about it, okay? Okay, so this was a fairly big one that you'd talked about. So here's our caseload, and I delete them. Now, because of what we've done a couple of things. So all those annoying messages that used to come up and say, are you sure you want to do it? Are you really sure you want to do it? Are you really, really sure you want to do it? They don't come up anymore. It just goes bang, delete.
That's scary.
To mitigate against that, which is part of it that you requested. So there's a new tick box here called View Deleted.
Oh, yeah. Where is it? I can undo up there.
Up the top. So if we go View Deleted, it comes up with the list of deleted shifts for that date range. So it's basically exactly the same day manager, but showing the deleted shifts, and they'll have a line through them. Yeah?
Undo that delete?
Yes. So you can just tick one or more of those and go right click, recover deleted.
And is there a limitation on how, what date range you can look at that?
Dangerous too,
That is the best tool ever.
Love it.
but very dangerous as well.
Well, yeah, it's not dangerous. It's not dangerous now because you can easily recover them.
It was dangerous before.
But Tim, will that have the audit saying that you deleted them?
Yep. So the full audit's there as well. So if I look in there,
Put a note in and say scheduler was having a vague out, like didn't watch what I was doing.
No, you're human. That's okay.
Is
It's
there
if you make one every 5 minutes, that's not okay.
You're not okay. As I said, yeah, that's at 10 o'clock at night. And that's when
I
you
don't know whether
go
it's
get
the-
off.
Is there a
That's
date,
how to stop.
a limit on the date range you can,
yeah, well, it's only showing you a fortnight at a time.
okay. So
It's the same as the normal day manager.
shouldn't it show you 28 days now?
No, the day manager is still 2 weeks. You've published out 4 weeks, so you can go to the
Yeah,
next
yeah,
fortnight
yeah, got
and do the same thing. So just view deleted. There's my deleted shifts. If I open that shift up and look in the audit history, I can see who it was deleted by and when.
So did we end up, remember before we said that once you deleted a service, all previous notes were gone?
No, it's all
Are they going to all be there
attached, yeah.
We keep that a secret, that function,
Good management.
What?
Yeah.
Keep it a secret.
the view deleted shift.
How long does that last for? Like,
Forever.
oh, okay.
And you can restore just one, so you deleted a whole day, but could I have just selected one out of that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One or more, doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
yeah, same as now.
So now if I go back to the normal view, so I just untick it,
Yeah.
so there they all are. But if you go into it and have a look, it also tells you that when it was deleted, who deleted it, date and time, but then who recovered it. So you can,
Accountability.
Yeah, it is.
Serial offender.
Well, I've never been able to prove it.
okay, now we had some discussions about sort of like the process with marking progress and things like that. So this is a little bit about process and some changes that we made based on the feedback and my listening to what you were doing. So what happens now is if you go right click and you want to allocate a staff member, oops. Now, what we're suggesting you should be doing is SMSing the worker to see whether they're available for the job.
Is that gonna be turned on?
I'll have to check with Bob.
When,
mean-
when are we gonna do this? For
We can
when?
do it from here.
Same day?
No, that's what I was talking about.
Same day, you mean?
Yeah,
Like you wanna allocate them something in that day?
yes.
Right.
So basically we've got an unassigned shift today and we need to find a worker to fill it, which is what these guys are doing on a regular basis. Like when the worker calls in sick. So they'd highlight, they'd unassign the caseload, now they've got to search for a worker to replace that worker. So they've found a worker who's available or several workers that are available and they want to find out, can you do the job?
So can you SMS 2 or 3 people in the same,
Yeah, yep. You could
around the same space?
Yes. Now but the gap at the moment, which we're not sure of, is whether Bob has enabled SMSing.
Oh, yeah, right, yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Have they got-
Yeah, so sort of, it's also a little bit of change management around culture. So at the moment, which distresses me, I had someone in the contact centre the other day, last week, or whenever I was here last, almost begging a staff member to do the shift. Like, please, would you?
Yeah, that's not.
Yeah, so that's got to stop. Like, that's just got to stop. If a staff member says they're available to us Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, for example, from 7 o'clock in the morning till 7 o'clock at night, then we will allocate them shifts from 7 o'clock in the morning, any time in that time between 7 and 7. I'm not going to allocate them anything, we shouldn't be allocating anything Monday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, before 7 or after 7. If we need to allocate them something same day, absolutely courtesy should lift the phone and say, "Look, I've had to," it's like, "Would you mind, is it pretty please?" It's like, I've had to put a shift in at 12 o'clock for you, I've moved so and so and I've moved so and so, can you refresh please? You're advising them what you've needed to do.
And then they say, oh, I made a doctor's appointment in that day.
Well, that's another,
Okay, so that's a whole other conversation, so then that needs to be recorded, so that because what happens is, I have to end up dealing with the, Anne never gives me enough work. I sort of demonstrate that, there's nothing to demonstrate that Anne never gives me enough work. So this is really important. And so if they continue to ring up and say, no, actually, you know what? Well, okay, then we don't allocate you things on a Wednesday anymore. Let's talk about, the team leaders say, let's talk about what you're about, actually, if you're available on Wednesday. So, because this kills you.
we do have to give them a work-life balance, but they've got to communicate
So
with
do
them in
we.
advance. I've got to write, you've got me rostered to 12 next Wednesday, beautiful, I'm going to book my hair in, or doctors or whatever, and then they communicate back, can you
So
book
there's a
me
bit
out?
of change management around getting some,
We're
Are
working
there
with
any
them as
rules
well.
regarding their availability and changing that? Like when they come on board, is their availability set for 6 months, and if it's going to change, they actually have to talk to the manager about it, or do
We do
they
a little
need to
bit
give notice?
So when I do, even at an interview point now, I literally, when I ask or discuss what is your availability, I make it really clear that you must, you're making an agreement with me. I don't expect that's going to change, and if it is, you need to have that conversation.
so one of the things you might like to know is that I'm used to having what I call a roster availability form, and that is included in the staff members pack. We talk about it at an interview, like when are you actually available, before interview,
Yeah?
because I don't want to interview you if you're not available on the day we need you to be available. We're starting to send those messages very strongly. Yes, we need to review how we manage it, then we give them the form, they complete the form, and yes, of course they always change their minds. Members don't change their spots, they always change their mind. But we say you can't change it until you've spoken to your service delivery team leader and got it approved.
I just try to scare them from the get-go now.
Yeah, well, we need to,
That's another process.
that actually needs to start from when we,
Screening,
Well, they do telescreening one.
no, it actually starts when
availability
you
is what they tell us.
advertise.
yeah?
Right, it starts from advertising, because if we need to fast track, look, you know what? if this is not the right place for you, that's absolutely fine, let's find the right one for you. We can say, you knew all about this, it was in the advertisement, we talked about it at pre-screening, we talked about it at interview, you filled in a form. I appreciate your family, life really changes, however, we can't keep changing this every fortnight.
Yeah.
So-
We have a business to run.
So should we have a period of, you have to give us 2 weeks notice of that change of time? Because we get things through from, team leaders going, oh, this support worker's availability has changed as of next week.
And so
Sometimes.
so it is up to the team leader to try and have that negotiation around, things are a bit tight at the moment, could you give us 2 weeks, or could, because you don't win anyone with lemons, so that's about them having that conversation, do you mind if we do this, is there any chance we could do this, blah, blah, blah. But if there are circumstances saying, from Monday, I can't do this anymore because my child's got to go to a school that's now 20 k's away and I've got no one else to take them, so I've got to do it.
So, can I just add to that?
Yes.
So when the person is employed, they definitely should be filling out that form, and HR should be putting it into their permanent roster,
Yes.
right? So that by the time
Is
it
that
gets to
happening?
schedulers,
No, we have to put it in.
to do it.
Oh, we do it?
FCTL's put it in.
Okay, that's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's happening. I would have thought that should be an HR thing, but if it's happening, that's the starting point. But then, when you think about it, that what they've given you when they say that availability, if they are not going to be available in there, it's a leave request effectively,
Correct.
right? Because if they had a shift roster, they'd have to work it. If they want to take the day off, they've got to give you notice, and if it's not noticed, it's going to be like sick leave or something like that. So, any change to their availability, which has been set as available, should really be, as far as I'm concerned, treated from a business process exactly the same as a leave application. So whatever rules you've got wrapped around, if you want leave, this is what you have to do, they should be replicated for availability. If you want to change your availability, this is what you've got to do. And they should follow the same sorts of process, and it should be formalised. Like, they should sign that form of availability when they're first put on, and then if they want a variation to that, they've got a variation form or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, I just get, so the form itself is pretty clear, they just walk through it, it explains, what they need to consider, and we do it twice a year. We do it coming into Christmas, because often availability changes coming through in Christmas, and then we do it again around, probably do it October,
I was going to say, it
October,
had to be
November.
earlier.
and then we do it, when they come back from, because often they'll change their availability when they come back to school for kids. So,
There's got to be enough lag time to get extra staff on over Christmas, if you're going to ask them just before Christmas.
the reason you ask for it over Christmas is you just make sure that no one's going to bloody do the dirty on you over Christmas. And so that's why you do it. And when you start to put in a pattern of, we start to manage it proactively rather than getting this reactive stuff all the time, it starts to stabilise a bit, and then we get tougher with how we manage it. And then the next step is, like if we said to them, well, now it's going to be leave, 750 of them, we'd have revolt on our hands, because they all just think it's like Willy Wonka's lolly shop. I'll do what I want when I want. If I want to go shopping, I'm going to go shopping. See you later.
Sal tried to get a service moved yesterday to a woman who had full availability. She'd driven 3.5 hours up the road to visit some friends, family. No, I can't do it, sorry, I'm not in town. But didn't actually say, I'm leaving town, and there's no one to do the service. That sort of mentality has to change.
Yeah, so that's right. And you know whose responsibility that is? Exactly. So they're the ones that need to get these messages across very, very firmly and very, very strongly. This is what it is. You need to be
expectations.
And if you're not, so if you want to go visiting 3.5 hours up the road, it's going to be a non-available day.
Just
Then-
communicate it more.
Yeah, the thing that also gets affected is they're part-time, what are their contracted hours? So, because that needs to change. We're not giving them 20 hours over 2 days. Or if you're doing a lot of makeup party.
And in the general thrust of that conversation, don't forget you've got your star rating, right, which you need to work out what you want to do with.
Using that though?
Looks like they're using it.
We
No,
could,
that's our demo data.
we could, but we have to be clear about what constitutes a star.
That's right.
So
Probably
it's-
needs
My
to
star
be
might be your
implemented
star.
by the team leader.
Pardon?
Probably needs to be controlled by the team leader, the rating.
I think it's gotta come from a HR
Yeah,
level, like
or
across
the
the board
feedback.
level. Because you're gonna have
It's
team
important.
leaders.
Yeah,
favourite
that's,
people.
so that's why you have to have really objective categories around it. So are they always on time? Do they always complete all their documentation? Have they
Drop
had
down
no
boxes,
errors?
select.
Have they had no complaints? Do they contribute at the staff meeting? Is all their training up to date?
It's sort of like the M&A, you just put
I think it
drop
needs,
down question, like not in that, like that format, but you have like a drop down box, like them questions you had, and then it sort of totals a count of stars of what that would look like, because of.
Yep. And the worker will never see the stars, because heaven forbid if they did.
But there, as Gabby says, there's certain questions we have to answer, and then it populates its own star rating from them answers we put into it.
Because if you don't do that, you'll have the team leader who's got a favourite,
Yes.
right? And the favourite's dodgy to everybody else but that team leader.
or you'll have the team leader with
A grudge.
a staff full of stars and someone else following.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, it's
It
gotta
can't be subjective. It's
No, it
not to
has
be
to be.
objective. You've got to have
Yeah.
criteria.
So if you can get that in place, when you're looking at a worker that's like 7 stars, you can be pretty well guaranteed that if they've got availability and you give them a ring, that they'll be able to do the job, which will stop you having to try and remember it, or go through a whole list when you could have just taken that worker straight up.
But then we watch
we
it
know
them
who
hours,
they
because
are.
sometimes them people, we end up putting so much work on them all the time because of,
Yeah, that's because we're not doing proper workforce
Yes.
management and
Yes.
workforce planning, which we'll get to.
yeah.
But this is the first step.
Yeah.
We need to get this nice and clean and schmick first. Start putting some of those other foundation things in. Then
And-
we can get to that.
You can set maximum, we'd need the information to do it, but even before you get to the award interpreter, you can set maximum hours that they are allowed to work, and if you try and roster more than that number of hours in a day or for the fortnight, it'll either warn you or stop you.
They're all set at 38 hours max.
Yeah, that's just in their staff record, but you can actually set like individualised award conditions for like 10 hours a day and 76 hours a fortnight.
Oh, all right.
Can that be turned on and off? So if you've got somebody on a return to work plan that can't work more than 5 hours a day, then they physically can't be rostered for more than 5 hours a day?
Yes, it can be.
Is it difficult, or is it like?
No, it just needs to be thought through. So it would mean you'd have to have a special award for return to work or whatever it's called, because they're going to be exempt from the normal conditions.
But none of that's turned on now anyway, is it?
No, at the moment you're just manually
Yeah.
checking. But part of, like moving forward, part of what we want is that in the day manager you're not able to roster overtime that's going to,
Yeah.
without like some specific approval.
But award interpreter's coming. You're working on that, aren't you, next week? Or not? No.
Nothing next week. No. That's
What do you
it's,
mean, nothing next week?
it's not in this phase.
Oh,
So I think they've actually got it in for phase 3.
okay,
It keeps changing, but
okay. Yes, that's because we want everything tomorrow.
yeah, but it is there. It's on the horizon, but they haven't. I don't think that's specified in phase 2 for what they've asked for.
Yeah, because the case management stuff is phase 2. Rostering stuff is phase 1. Case management stuff's phase 2.
That's it.
I think so.
Plus the
And the amalgamation of the
Yeah,
two.
yeah.
When's the amalgamation of the two?
Phase 2.
Forms
Hasn't
22?
been-
At Wednesday.
It's
Sorry,
happening.
Forms?
2020.
Forms 22?
E-forms, yeah.
It's happening.
2020?
Um,
Stop it. It's happening.
At least it's happening.
It's happening.
I got my bit, so.
Yeah.
So it wasn't where this has sort of digressed a bit, but you should be able to use that functionality, like the star rating, to give you a clear vision of whether somebody's likely to be available or not. But the point I started with was that now when you do that, and if the SMS, so we also need to confirm with Bob if the SMS is available, and you guys need to.
I don't think it is. I don't think it is.
Well, you can email them
At
as
this
well.
point,
Doesn't make
Yeah,
a difference.
yeah, if
Can we
either either.
make it be?
It's something to do with the,
Yeah, he's gotta
I
sort
don't
it
know, it's got to sort out. So I think the easiest thing is probably
What we're doing
email
now.
or IM. Do you do it? Do you like
So with the SMS or the email,
message media?
when they respond, does it automatically fill the shift?
No. No, because it's still got to be filtered through roster. Otherwise, you wouldn't have really any control over it.
Unless you turned it on the MTA and they could pick their shift.
Well, yeah, so you could do it, but
No, but as in like if you send them, oh, can you do this shift at 10 o'clock with, you know, this customer, like you've sent them the specific shift offer,
Yeah, but you might send that to 5 people.
yeah, but whoever responds first.
but they're not responding, if you know what I mean. Like
Yeah.
if you're not SMSing, you've got nothing to grab, and if it's an email response, it's going back to whatever the email is.
So the SMS that's going out to the staff member, is that auto-populated to say, hi, like, you know, we...
It can be. It depends whether you send it as a job request or as just an SMS email. If you send it as an SMS email or an email, it'll just bring up the email screen.
Is it telling them they're doing a DA if it's automatically populated? Because then they go no.
No, it just says can you do job on such and such at such and such a time with this. It does tell them the client name, I think.
And when they get to say, you'll be calling them saying, start your shift.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but this is where we start to gather the evidence to performance and manage people.
We already have
Without the
serial people
evidence,
that.
yeah, without the evidence, we can't performance manage. So we've got to have the evidence to say you've now knocked back 4 opportunities for
So
work.
Tim, if that was up and running and we SMS'd them, how, if they reply, how does that come back?
It depends on what Bob sets up
Right, okay.
and your email routing, basically.
That's not how it works.
We've got some nice stuff.
So
That's not in place on Monday, though.
no, well, no, I don't think so.
Some new ones.
Yeah, that bit we've got no control over, but the mechanism is there. So if it can be done and Bob can switch on to SMS, you can SMS. If it can't, you can still email because you've definitely got email functionality. And then you've also got their phone number. So take your pick, but you know our ideal mechanism is that you just highlight a group of workers that are supposed to be available and just go right click SMS, and they get an SMS saying can you do this shift, and then one of them, would, you know, maybe several get back to you and say yes, but you choose the one that you want to do the job out of that group.
We just need to make sure we get the notification if it doesn't happen.
So when that happens, the shift will automatically set to marked in progress. Yep. So if you do go into the list of available support workers and you email or SMS any of them, it'll automatically mark that shift as in progress. And if you open that shift up and look in the service notes, it'll tell you when and at what time the job request was sent. Okay, so you've got like an audit of the fact that you've sent a work request out to the worker.
Tried to,
Yep. And then largely, we're still doing a bit of bench testing on it, but that lock shift option is now available as well.
So it can't be moved.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
Now it's only operating at shift level, so you can selectively lock shift. You can lock it in the master, or you can lock it in the ad hoc roster. If it's locked in the master, it'll populate as a lock shift.
That is perfect.
So who can click that button?
At the moment, any rosterer, so you'll have to tell us if it needs security around it.
No, because, well,
No, 'cause
it doesn't
we
have an
need to
audit
know.
history. If you lock
Yeah.
it and then unlock it, does that audit history? Or no?
Yes.
Well, we don't want anyone else with schedules to be able to, or us, these way helping with
Big
us, to be able
schedules
to
to do it, yeah.
routine.
So you just
I occasionally have case managers that go in and fiddle in their issue.
They
They
should.
don't need to, but they do.
that's all right. We can make it a specific user approval. That's
Yeah. No, it's not you. It's in the master's, yeah, baby. I can't remember. It wasn't Judy, and it wasn't wasn't Patricia. It might have been Tracy.
Okay, so Rachel would be able to go into the users and set who's got access to it.
Yeah.
Once it's ticked,
But who is that going to be?
Probably should be scheduled
And if it was moved or anything else, it would be part of the audit history anyway.
yeah.
So you have traceability.
Yeah, auditors.
They're good for multiple, which is services.
Yeah.
So if you did try and move it, it's going to come up with just a message that actually blocks you out.
So if we can't, like if we're writing our notes down and we can't remember something, like it doesn't make sense, is there any like cheat sheets or? We'll be working.
Yeah, there's a whole series of videos coming out.
Oh, okay.
So some of these won't have videos. Like I'm having to explain the content because these are the changes that you guys actually had talked to us about.
Yep.
But they will become embedded in the process. So there will be a video on how to lock a shift.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
And-
those sorts of things.
And this video will be available as well.
Okay.
So if you need to go back to the training day.
Yep. Oh,
And where will we find it? Sorry.
We're putting it on YouTube at the moment in a private channel.
Yeah.
But we'll also deliver the video content to Bob to find out where it's going to live in terms.
Ultimately, we don't know where it's going to live.
Yeah.
We've made a private YouTube integrated living channel at the moment to publish it to, and then the whole lot will be put wherever ILA wants to.
So it could be in the new SharePoint world.
But we'll get a link to it.
When they
Yeah.
get
For next week.
When
will
Well-
they be ready?
Well, some of them are ready now. You just need
We're
to.
publishing that. So maybe after lunch, before we go into the afternoon session, we'll just do a quick overview of what it looks like.
Yeah, so it's just a matter of can we give them the private YouTube channel?
Sure. And I can't see why not. It's just we're doing changes to the videos, but that's not
Yeah,
an issue.
we've got to do update the process and procedures and stuff. Can I ask for one more change that hasn't been done? See how your pins and your question marks are the same colour? That looks great on your 47 size screen, but on my little laptop at home,
It's not going to be.
the red and the red question marks and the red pins, not so much for me, but I find so at the moment because we are just so inundated. I've got my SDTLs in scheduling with me, and they're not scheduled, and neither should they be. But if a pinned service that shouldn't be allocated is going to get allocated, it will always be by somebody who it doesn't work that roster permanently. So if it was a different colour, it would be much easier to see a pin and know. Well, it just depends. When you're working on a laptop screen, it's really, really quite small, and the colour behind them isn't as clear as what it is looking up there.
It's a question mark to black without a circle around it.
100%. Go for it.
And the pin stays red.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's a great idea. Thank you.
That's all right. Okay, then another thing which came up, which we did as a matter of course in any case, but we've changed. So now, if you just want to get to a specific staff or client section, if you go up and we already had discussed that you've got it from a recipient point of view. If we choose a client, well, they haven't got any shifts put on me, but it'll just display that client's shifts for that week. So you'll see all support workers that's working with that client for the week if there's a cancellation, like a bulk cancellation or something like that.
Yeah.
So you can easily see all workers affected.
Well, that's new.
But we've also done the same. Actually, I'll kill that filter. So you need to get. Actually, this will be a little bit about work practice as well. and some of these will prove beneficial in other areas that we can't predict at the moment. But people need to get used to the fact that these two things up here give you access to client and or staff information, yeah? So generically, if you're in the day manager and you're thinking you need to go to the client manager, you don't. You just need to go to that button up the top. If you're in the day manager and you want to get to a staff record, no, you don't. You just need to go to that button up the top and click for staff inquiry, yeah?
Yeah.
So it's always going to display an unfiltered list, apart from your branch filters and things, but an unfiltered list of staff or an unfiltered list of clients. And then you can search for specific staff or specific clients. And in either case, when you select it, so like Abbott Grand there, if I go into staff inquiry and double click on him, it just brings up his roster. But, yeah, sorry.
You know currently how the competency unallocates the work, and you go, so if we hit competencies now, it doesn't bring up what the outstanding count is?
No, it's showing you all competencies that are required.
Yeah.
Was it turned red the one that's causing the issue, or does it have a date attached to it that's causing the issue?
So you know that diagram one?
No, because it might be multiple, I mean, there might be multiple reasons.
So if they display,
If you go back to
I don't know
what-
what I'm asking.
Yeah, so I suppose the question is, why do you need to know that? Because,
that diagram one as an example,
yeah,
I need to know what the competency that's holding it up is so I can tell it to do it. So currently I go back to the
So you
staff
go back to the
roster
staff.
and I've got to look at all the competencies and find the current date one that's out. So
where is it?
okay,
So just right click, view staff details, competencies.
yeah, okay.
You can,
But, I mean, that query's been generated, like, in an ideal world, that shouldn't be your issue.
No, but I'm a team leader, so.
Okay, yeah.
No.
Because from a scheduler's perspective, they don't need to worry about, like, if the worker's either available or not.
No, but if they're a nice scheduler, they're going to go, Sue, diagrams, first aid still not done, we'll chase it up.
yeah,
Okay.
or I send it
They're not just going to ignore it, because it's a benefit of all of us that it actually gets big.
So if it's, I mean, if it's an existing shift, you can do that even faster, which is you just go right click on the shift and
Yeah.
staff details.
Okay, perfect. Yeah,
Yeah?
yeah,
But you can also, like, if the shifts have been unassigned, well, that wasn't really a question, was it? But I mean, if they've been unassigned and you can't, and there's no shift on there for that worker,
Yeah.
and you just want to check their competencies, you can just
right, click.
go into the staff inquiry, find the staff member, right click,
Yeah.
view staff details.
Yeah.
So can you do that from, like if they're in the bookings, unallocated bookings? Can you click on the client's name?
Is it
Yeah.
attached to the last
Yeah.
support worker while it's in unallocated? So if it falls off of someone for a comp issue and you're clicking it up there, will it take, can you view the staff details that it came from? Or not? It's become something new by being unallocated. I know
No,
you can see who it was if you turn it around to run by caseload, but
well, it shows you in the, I'm not sure about the query, it shows you in the service notes that it was unassigned from this worker because of this competency issue.
so you can't, but it doesn't tell you what the competency issue is in the service notes.
No, but you can go straight up,
So
just,
then do you go to the staff member?
yeah,
And so you can't go from the service in unallocated, you then click the staff member button, yeah.
correct, yeah, because it's no longer attached to that
That's
staff
what I'm
member.
saying. Yeah, it does unattach it.
So you know who the staff member is, so you just
Yes.
go staff inquiry, right click,
Yeah.
staff details.
Yeah.
And that filtering that I'm talking about there applies to, like, if I've got the whole day manager displayed and then I want to see a group of staff, you could go staff inquiry and do a filter for the group or team of staff or whatever you wanted to look at. and then you can choose multiple support workers. So in your case, the work practice I'm thinking of would be that you choose a few workers that you want to sort of map or have a look at, and then you can filter for them, and then right click select all, or select control click to select, and then when you refresh back, it brings up all of those specific staff members' work days or rosters for the fortnight. So we've also adjusted, because going back to what we were talking about with the right-click change activity, so now that you've got that functionality available just for the change in the activity, we had covered off that you'd need some sort of way to check because you don't want to be having invalid information for the payroll export. So we've added into the pay integrity check that is producing the log files for Susie. It'll also pick up any people where the activity or the program is misaligned with their approvals. But largely that's prevented by the fact that it now checks the approvals as well. I don't know whether it was you guys that had asked, but we had added what do I want? Admin note form. So it was a new function that we had added, which was that you could start a client note directly from the day manager. So we just right click on the service and go client note. But we had noted that you couldn't move or drag that form, so I can't remember whether that came out of the last meeting, but you can move that around as well. And then I think this was a dual change that we made. I think somebody here had requested that you see week 1 and week 2 hours separately. Yep, so that's there now. So you've got your fortnightly hours, then you've got week 1, week 2, but we've also put in worked days during the fortnight.
That's really cool. That is real.
Yep. Now,
So that's a running tally.
yes. So that'll display there in any case. Then there's just a question about how heavily it's enforced. So we've also got the capacity to switch on that you can't work more than 10 hours a day, more than 76 hours a week, and you've got to have 4 days off in the period or 5 days off. So that when you try and roster a shift, if you had ignored that information, it'll either warn you or it'll say you can't do it, one of the two.
So is that week 1 showing our week, like our?
No, it's working from this date here.
From,
so whatever you've got displayed. So if you want to work in another pay period, just change it to the start of that pay period.
Yeah.
And it's showing you fortnight, week 1 and week 2 for that pay period, and also the number of days that they're rostered to work.
Yeah, cool.
You know what would be really cool, not today, but one day, put it on his list, is if you added in the public holiday hours where it automatically calculated from their master roster what they would be getting paid as a public holiday. Because when you're live scheduling, you've got to keep an eye on, in that actual pay period fortnight, what they would have worked on the public holiday, make sure they're over their contracted hours at the end of the pay period, but you've then got to go check that information from somewhere else. Because you clear, if they're not working on the public holiday, you clear their roster, but they might be entitled to 8 hours of pay.
So
You know what I'm saying? Am I making any sense?
Yeah, but you'd have to replace that with a public holiday paid.
You do, but you don't do it here.
yeah, so it doesn't sit in the
You don't-
roster,
it
so
doesn't sit in the
you're not
rosters.
going to see it. So when you unallocated that support workers shifts from a public holiday, is there something that could go there
Is there a
to
replacement?
have like public holiday
Like a
hours?
placeholder?
But it does.
Does
No.
not?
That's not our process.
Yeah,
That's
not
it. So-
ours it doesn't, yeah.
Well, it physically could, but that's not our process. Like our process is we unallocate the work, and then payroll then work out the make-up pay hours and do it as a manual line item in the pay.
Yeah, done from
The
payroll.
SDTL has to advise payroll of what the hours they would have worked for public
And
holiday.
we run another spreadsheet just to keep
The
track.
schedule's got to tell the SD, the team leaders.
We do.
So I'm not sure if I'm not understanding, but see how it's automatically created the leave days?
Because they get cancelled, usually they'll be cancelled, and that you, because they're cancelled in advance, if it's DAs, for example.
Oh, I see. So
Non-essential services are cancelled with notice, so no make-up pay. For an L2, their entire day will disappear because they didn't have any essential services.
So we're just talking about the pro rata time that they would have worked on that
Yeah.
public holiday if it hadn't been changed.
Yeah.
But then if you move their service to another day, then you've got to deduct that off
Yeah.
that as well. There's a lot more.
Yeah, but
So
I
they
don't.
really haven't lost their hours.
Yeah.
I think you could solve all of that if you just unallocate it before you cancel it. Now that you can cancel a booking.
Can you talk to payroll and make sure that they're happy with that then? What does it get into? That's like leave without pay, or just so you can see the hours, because that's all we need.
Well, we'd have to. Yeah, there'd have to be a little bit of a discussion about what pay code this is supposed to be.
Yeah.
And you'd need a specific work process mapped out. Like what I'm thinking, and this is off the top of my head, but if you highlight the caseload and go right click unallocate, and then you'd have to change it from the default leave setting, which would be personal leave, to unpaid public holiday or make-up hours or whatever it is. So you'd put that in there, and that would give you, as a starting point, that would give you all your public holiday hours.
Yeah.
They'll be included, because they're on the day manager, they'll be included in
the
work
fortnightly
hours.
Yep.
Then you'll just be left, after you've finished doing whatever you're doing, you'll just be left with a big pile of unassigned bookings at the top, and you just highlight the lot and go right click cancel shift.
Yep. Perfect. If you do that as a bulk lot, remember we talked about doing a cancellation as a bulk lot, and it was only putting a case note against one client, the very first
No,
client.
bulk inserts.
So it will now,
Yep.
everybody gets the same message, cancelled due to public holiday.
Or whatever you typed in, yeah.
Cool. Perfect.
And I think, just remind me, was there some work to be done around the coding of the cancellations?
Yes.
What was the stuff we were going to do there? Just rationalise them, wasn't it?
We'll change them. And you're going, that was gonna go through Puneet now?
Yeah, but wasn't one of them about cancelled?
Yeah, cancel
Like the
integrated
default
living, cancel disaster.
Yes. Yeah, so you would have an activity that was aligned with, like, cancelled due to public holiday or whatever it was.
So that's part of the, what we were talking about on the phone the other day, the list, the
Yep.
program catalogue.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah, it was a cleanup process.
Yep.
Okay, so that's where we're at with the changes, and that'll be in, like, unless there's issues, as far as we're concerned, that'll be published on Monday into your live environment. So, do you want to take a break? And then we'll just review the work, like the work processes themselves, and give you a look at some of the videos, and get some feedback from you about additional things that we need as work process videos.